Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and noticed a depth that can't be faked? A silence that carries both pain and wisdom at the same time? Carl Jung believed that suffering is not just a wound, it's a forge. It breaks illusions, tears away false masks, and shapes the soul into something far greater than it once was. And here's the truth. The people who have suffered deeply are not weaker. They are transformed. They carry traits, invisible to most, but undeniable once you learn how to recognize them. In this video, we'll explore 7 traits of people who have suffered deeply. Traits that Jung himself would say are born out of the shadow, out of the confrontation with life's darkest moments. These are not traits you can study from books, memorize from lectures, or borrow from someone else. No, they are carved into soul, branded through loss, betrayal, grief, and the quiet nights of despair that nobody else sees. But why does this matter to you? Because if you have walked through pain, you may already be carrying these traits without realizing it. And if you recognize them in yourself, it means you survived what could have destroyed you and transformed that suffering into your strength. That's why I encourage you, don't just watch passively. Stay with me until the end and reflect. And in the comments, share which of these traits resonates most with you. Write it down, not just to tell me, but to affirm to yourself, yes, I carry this depth. Carl Jung taught that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. It is only through suffering that the unconscious breaks into awareness, forcing us to grow beyond the person we thought we were. So if you've been through heartbreak, rejection, or trials that made you question everything, you are not broken. You are being reshaped. You are closer to your most authentic self than ever before. So let's begin. Let us uncover the traits of those who have walked through darkness and returned with light. Because if you carry these traits, your suffering was never in vain. The silent strength behind pain. One of the most striking traits of those who have suffered deeply is a strength that does not announce itself with loudness or pride. It is silent, steady, and almost invisible to those who have never walked the same path. You see, people who have endured real suffering rarely feel the need to prove their resilience to the world. They don't parade their battles or boast about their scars. Instead, their strength lives in their quiet presence. The way they face challenges with calm, the way they endure storms without complaining, the way they move through life with inner stability that others can sense but not fully explain. Carl Jung often spoke about the confrontation with the shadow, the darker, painful parts of ourselves and of life. For those who have suffered, this confrontation is not theory, it is lived experience, and it changes them. After you've lost someone you loved, after you've been betrayed, after you stood face to face with despair, smaller problems simply don't shake you the same way. The silent strength that suffering creates is not arrogance. It is perspective. It's the deep knowing that if you survive the worst, you can handle whatever comes next. Think of someone who has walked through fire. They don't rush into panic when life throws them difficulties, because they've already stood in flames and survived. Their silence in moments of crisis is not emptiness. It's mastery. They don't need to overreact, because pain has already taught them what truly matters and what is not. But here's the paradox. Many times, others misinterpret this quiet strength. They may see someone calm under pressure and assume they don't care. They may notice their silence and mistake it for weakness. In truth, it is the opposite. That silence is discipline. That calm is the fruit of surviving storms that would have shattered others. Jung believed that what doesn't kill you does not simply make you stronger. It awakens something deeper, a resilience that becomes part of your character. If you recognize this in yourself, the ability to face chaos with calm, to endure without needing to shout about your endurance, then you carry this first trait. It is a silent strength born only from pain. Empathy that sees beyond words. When a person has suffered deeply, their heart develops a kind of radar that ordinary eyes cannot see. They no longer hear only words. They feel the energy beneath them. They notice the subtle pauses, the trembling voice, the glance that tries to hide pain. This is empathy, but not the everyday kind. It is empathy sharpened by experience, born from the knowledge of what pain really feels like. Carl Jung taught that the human psyche is connected by an invisible web, what he called a collective unconscious. People who have suffered deeply tap into this dimension almost instinctively because they know suffering in their own flesh. They recognize it immediately in others. They don't need long explanations or dramatic confessions. A look is enough. A tone of voice is enough. Their soul whispers, "I've been there too." This kind of empathy can feel almost supernatural. Imagine someone who has lost everything, sitting with a friend who is silently struggling. Without a single word, they offer comfort simply by being present. Why? Because their very presence carries the vibration of understanding. They don't try to fix, they don't judge, they don't rush. They simply sit with the other in their pain, because they remember what it's like when no one could sit with theirs. And here's something important. This empathy is not pity. It does not place the sufferer below. Instead, it creates a bridge, a sacred space where both souls stand equal. This is why people who have endured deep suffering often become natural healers, guides, or confidants. Their empathy becomes a medicine, because it was forged in the same fire that once burned them. Jung said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." That is exactly what this trait is about. Once you have faced your own shadow, you are no longer afraid of someone else's. You can sit with their grief, their rage, their despair without running away, because you've learned to sit with your own. If you recognize this in yourself, the ability to sense the unspoken, to feel what others carry without words, then you carry the second trait. It is empathy that goes beyond words, the kind that only suffering can awaken. Wisdom that cannot be learned in books. There's a kind of wisdom that no classroom can offer, no teacher can fully explain, and no book can truly capture. It is a wisdom that comes only through living, through walking barefoot across the fire of suffering. People who have suffered deeply carry this rare kind of wisdom. It doesn't come from memorizing theories or quoting philosophers. It comes from scars that became teachers, from mistakes that turn into lessons, and from pain that carved understanding into their very soul. Carl Jung often reminded us that knowledge is of the mind, but wisdom is of the soul. Knowledge can be accumulated, stored, and repeated, but wisdom requires transformation. And transformation always involves struggle, loss, and pain. Those who have suffered deeply know things others cannot understand. They know the fragility of life, the impermanence of joy, and the necessity of hope. They know that darkness is not just an enemy, but also a teacher. Think about it. Someone who has never known hardship may speak confidently about strength, but someone who has suffered speaks quietly, because they know strength is not glamorous. It is often ugly, raw, and lonely. Their wisdom is not in polished speeches, but in the way they live. They understand that every high comes with a low, and every low carries the seed a higher rise. This is why people who have suffered deeply often give advice that pierces directly into the heart. Their words are simple, but they carry weight. When they say, "You will survive this," it's not theory, it's testimony. It comes from nights they thought they wouldn't make it, and did. Their wisdom has been tested, proven, and refined in real battle. Jung expressed this truth with powerful imagery. A tree that wants to reach heaven must send its roots down to hell. In other words, you cannot rise into light without first wrestling with darkness. And those who have suffered deeply embody this reality. Their wisdom is not shiny, but it is unshakable. If you recognize in yourself a wisdom that seems beyond your years, a knowing that came not from study but from struggle, then you carry this third trait. It is the wisdom that suffering alone can teach, wisdom carved by fire. Authenticity forged through brokenness. When suffering breaks you, something unexpected happens. The mask you once wore shatters. All the false roles, all the performances to be accepted, all the little lies we tell ourselves to fit in, they cannot survive the weight of true pain. And what remains after the breaking is authenticity. People who have suffered deeply no longer feel the need to pretend. They live closer to their truth, because they've already lost too much to waste time playing a role. Carl Jung described this process as individuation, the journey of becoming whole, of uniting the conscious and the unconscious, of stepping beyond persona, the mask society forces us to wear. Suffering accelerates this process. When you've been through pain so raw it strips you bare, you begin to see clearly. Approval means nothing, social masks mean nothing, and living a lie is far more painful than rejection. That's why people who have suffered deeply often radiate authenticity. They speak with honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. They live according to their values, even when it costs them relationships or opportunities. They no longer fear being misunderstood because they've already faced the loneliness of suffering and survived it. And so, they would rather be real and alone than fake and surrounded. This authenticity is powerful because it inspires others. When you encounter someone who has suffered and now lives authentically, you feel it. There is no pretense, no act. They are who they are, fully, and that gives others permission to do the same. But authenticity born of brokenness is not harsh. It is compassionate. These individuals don't wear masks, but they also don't demand perfection. They know what it means to fall apart, so they allow others to be imperfect too. Their authenticity is not about ego. It's about liberation. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Suffering often grants that privilege in the most brutal way. If you recognize in yourself the courage to be honest, to live without pretending, to show up as the real you no matter the cost, then you carry this fourth trait. It is authenticity, forged not by comfort, but by brokenness. Gratitude and purpose born from pain. When suffering strips your life down to the bare essentials, you begin to see the world differently. What once seemed ordinary suddenly becomes extraordinary. A simple sunrise, a kind word, a moment of laughter, these things take on a new glow. People who have suffered deeply develop a profound sense of gratitude because they know how easily everything can be lost. Gratitude is no longer a cliche. It is survival. Carl Jung believed that suffering is a great awakener, the force that compels us to face life as it truly is. And in that awakening, a shift happens. The sufferer stops chasing illusions and starts appreciating reality. They begin to notice the beauty in small things, because it was in small things, a breath, a hand held, a moment of peace, that they once found strength to keep going. But gratitude is only half of this trait. The other half is purpose. When you've suffered and survived, you realize that your pain must mean something, that it cannot be wasted. Many who have suffered deeply feel a call to help others, to guide, to heal, or to create something meaningful out of their wounds. Their suffering transforms into fuel for a higher mission. Think of the person who lost a loved one and then dedicated their life to supporting others in grief, or the one who faced addiction and now counsels those still trapped. These are not random choices. They are purpose born from pain. Jung would say this is the archetype of the wounded healer, those who turn their own wounds into a source of healing for others. And this purpose is powerful. It makes life meaningful again. It redeems the suffering, giving it weight, giving it dignity. Gratitude gives them joy for today. Purpose gives them direction for tomorrow. If you recognize this in yourself, the ability to be grateful even for small things, and the urge to transform your pain into service or creation, then you carry this fifth trait. It is gratitude and purpose, forged in the crucible of suffering, and it is one of the highest gifts life can give. So now we walk through these 5 powerful traits: the silent strength, the empathy beyond words, the wisdom that cannot be taught, the authenticity forged in brokenness, and the gratitude and purpose that rise from the ashes of pain. Together, they reveal a truth Carl Jung often emphasized. Suffering is not the end of the story. It is the crucible through which the soul becomes whole. Think about it for a moment. The world often tells us that happiness comes from avoiding pain, from building walls, from chasing comfort. But Jung would disagree. He taught that real consciousness, real depth, can only emerge when we confront the shadow, the dark nights, the losses, the betrayals. And when we do, we come out transformed. The people who carry these traits are living proof that suffering, while brutal, is also a teacher. If you recognize yourself in any of these traits, let that sink in. You are not weak because of what you endured. You are strong because of it. Your scars are not marks of defeat, but signatures of survival. They tell the world, I have been tested and I am still here. And that matters more than you know. Here is the most important part. Your suffering doesn't have to stay only with you. If you carry these traits, then you have within you the ability to inspire, to comfort, to guide others who are still in their darkest nights. Just as Jung described the archetype of the wounded healer, your pain can become someone else's hope. That is the ultimate transformation, turning personal suffering into collective healing. So let me ask you, which of these traits do you carry? Which one spoke to your soul the loudest? Share in the comments. Right, I carry this depth, or simply name the trait that resonated with you most. By doing so, you're not just answering me. You're affirming your own growth and connected with others who walk the same path. And if the wisdom of Carl Jung inspires you, if you believe suffering can be transformed into strength and purpose, then subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore the depths of psychology, spirituality, and the human soul. Because your journey doesn't end with pain, it begins there.